I hope all of you had a very refreshing lunch break and some nice networking out there. Let's continue today's ETHAsia, and we are very thrilled to reunite Ethereum communities across Asia and beyond, all united by a shared vision to make Ethereum Asia great again. Let's quickly recap this morning's highlights. We heard the opening remark from Mr. Du Yu, Executive Director of Wanxiang Blockchain and General Manager of Wanxiang Blockchain Labs. Also, a keynote speech from the co-founder of Ethereum, Vitalik, talk about the future of Ethereum Layer 1. Also, two different keynotes from Ethereum Foundation, Xiaowei and Devansh, cover governance, funding mechanism, and other visions and outlooks for the future. Now, we are diving into the second panel of the Chapter 2 about strengthening the ecosystem through collaboration. This panel, titled, How Can Layer 2 Work Together to Strengthen Ethereum? Please join me in welcoming our incredible panelists. YQ Jia, who will be moderating today's panel, co-founder of AltLayer. Again, Vitalik Buterin, co-founder of Ethereum. Felten, co-founder of Offchain Labs. And final panelist is Ben-Sasson, CEO of StarkWare. We can now to hear your vision. Welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon. So it is super exciting, basically to have all the panelists with us to discuss about these L2s and also interoperability in general. As normal, right? Probably we just do a quick self-introduction. I start from Vitalik. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm Vitalik. I'm co-founder of the Ethereum project.
I'm Ed Felten. I'm co-founder and chief scientist at Offchain Labs, the original developers of Arbitrum.
Ben-Sasson, co-founder and CEO of StarkWare.
Yeah, so YQ here, founder of AltLayer. We are basically providing the rollup services for all different stacks. Okay, since, as you can see from the topic of this panel, right? So we want to discuss about this either future for the Ethereum and also for the L2s. And first, we all know that for the past few years, we already made so many big progress for the rollups, especially the rollup-centric roadmap. But at the same time, people complaining about these fragmentations across the different rollups, right? So then the first question I would like to ask. So right now, either on Vitalik's side, Ethereum Foundation side, or on different L2s, right? So what are the sort of solutions you have, basically to mitigate this kind of fragmentation, and what are the new ways we basically can have to address this problem in general?
Yeah, so I think for the 80-20 of cross L2 fragmentation for me is a lot of it is UX, and a lot of it can also be simplified down to just the difficulty of moving tokens between L2s and between an L2 and L1. And this is one particular action that's a really big piece of what people actually want, right? And so we can figure out specific solutions for a lot of those specific problems, right? So for example, we've been working a lot on the open intents framework and making cross-chain asset transfers, including ETH, including ERC20s through intents, so meaning through basically liquidity providers fronting the money for you as a way of making transfers be instant. Also chain-specific addresses as one of these abstractions to make it feel more natural on the user side. We think a send should feel, or a cross L2 bridge should feel exactly the same as a send. And with chain-specific addresses, we can do that. And then after that, there's a series of different things that can be done further, right? So we talked about L2s being able to read L1 directly. We can talk about reducing the L2 finalization time. There's a whole series of different things that can be done to try to reduce those frictions further, right? And I mean, and then in the longer term, you know, you get into like synchronous composability, you get into other kind of more complicated things, right? But I think for me, the important thing is that we start with things that we already know how to do and that can increase the user experience and reduce the complexity of navigating the cross L2 environments right now. And there's lots of those that exist that are being worked on, and then keep improving them over time.
Yeah, so I think, you know, as Vitalik suggested, there's a lot of low-hanging fruit here around things like standardization. And that work is well underway with a lot of different teams participating. And so we can at least eliminate the unnecessary friction in how these things work. So there are standard ways that, say, a wallet can express what it is that a user is trying to do across different chains, and different stacks. In the longer run, I think user experience is key to this because in many respects it is fundamentally a UX problem. But I think we're not going to solve it just with user interfaces. It's going to take careful thinking through the whole stack, from user interface all the way down to core protocol, to try to figure out what are the affordances that need to be done at each layer in order to provide that user experience. It's really, I know, a big topic of research all across the Ethereum community. It certainly is for our team. And I'm really excited, actually, about some of the things that are in the pipeline. I think we're going to make progress on this faster than you might expect.
I don't have much to add. The technology that you know, we bring to table, and I think can really help, you know, moving between different chains or between L1 and L2, is that of validity proofs, in particular Starks. So the more you can prove cryptographically that something happened in a different part of the universe, cryptographically, the easier it becomes to you know, use and move assets or know that something really happened there. So we already, a team building on StarkNet already has storage proofs for Ethereum. The team is called Herodotus. And I think these kinds of things can be extended. So it's, of course, doesn't solve the whole problem, and you need standardization and a lot of efforts on improving UX. But the one thing that I think can really help that we can bring to the table is that of proving cryptographically that something happened in a different corner of the universe.
A quick follow-up question. Like recently, I think initiated by Ethereum Foundation, we have this open intern program, right? So Vitalik, can you share a little bit more on this sort of vision or open intent, and at the same time how, like, for example, Arbitrum and StarkWare, like, you basically contribute to this program?
Yeah, so the way that this works is, right, imagine I have 1 ETH on Optimism, and I'm trying to move the 1 ETH to Arbitrum, right? Then the problem is, if you do it natively, you have to wait 1 week, right? Because you have to wait for the Optimism withdrawal period, and in the other direction, it's basically the same too, right? And so what you do is, on the Optimism side, you you move the 1 ETH into a smart contract. And then the rules of that smart contract say, whoever proves that they sent to me the 1 ETH on the other end, on the Arbitrum end, they will be able to get that 1 ETH from the Optimism side, right? And so from my perspective as a sender, like, I first send a transaction, I send my coin on Optimism into this lockbox, and then immediately after, someone claims it. Like, there's going to be a race to claim it first, and it's done through a smart contract to prevent like double claiming. And then what I see is, like, I feel like I just see those coins appearing, and possibly even at the same time some action immediately happening on the Arbitrum side, right? And then you have a liquidity provider that's like waiting for that 1 week on my behalf, right? And so it's a pretty standard technique, pretty easy to understand. And things like across protocol, we're doing it from a user's perspective, especially for small value transfers. It's extremely fast. Like, you get like 2 to 5 seconds is very normal. And but one of the important things, I think, is that things like this need to be open, right? So things like, basically, one of the tests that I use to like basically evaluate, like whether or not we're like going in the right direction is like I think every property that Ethereum L1 had back in 2015 should be, as much as possible, a property that the cross L2 ecosystem should have in 2025, right? And so you as a user should be able to move your coins from one place to another place without trusting single centralized parties, right? And so you as a user, you should not be aware of like who's even filling your intent, right? It should be done with an open protocol. Any solver should be able to come in, freely participate. It's an open market system. And like this is the sort of stuff that the open intents framework is standardizing.
How's the progress on Arbitrum side?
Sure. I love the open intent framework. It's a big part of our plans to build out interop at Offchain Labs. The Arbitrum community is bought into this and really focusing not on do we do open intent framework because that is because that seems like a no-brainer. But instead, what is the best way to do it? How can you make the settlement of the intents as trustless and fast and cheap as possible?
Yeah, we want to support it. We have a different virtual machine and programming language, so it makes it a bit more difficult to integrate with, but of course we would like to be a part of it, and I hope we can get there as quickly as possible.
Actually, just one immediate question there. Would it not be possible to support it by using the open intents framework as is with Kakarot and then doing some kind of StarkNet in like native thing to move things to other places in StarkNet land?
So in theory, practice and theory are the same. Like, yes, in theory you can do it easily and immediately. In practice, it's getting it to the wallets and integrated and getting Kakarot to do. So Kakarot is a ZK EVM on top of StarkNet that is basically proofed with Stark proofs. So it's sort of halfway between StarkNet and Ethereum or a ZK VM. But yes, theoretically this is very easy. Practically requires a bit effort.
Yeah, so my next question will be like, we all know that for the past few years, right? I mean, we all like sort of witnessed this DeFi summer, the boom of all the different DeFi applications. We saw the surge of these super high gas fee, like over 500 GV, right? And then later, Vitalik proposed this like roll-up centric roadmap to really address like the scalability issue. And so far, I believe with all the efforts from the panelists, we really achieve like right now we can easily achieve like tons of thousand TPS at the roll-up level, right? But right now I can see that from Vitalik talks and Ed and Ali talks, right? We are still trying to figure out new ways to either improve the scalability and also the security, decentralization, and basically all different features for roll-up. And then my next question will be, so what are the ways like as Ethereum as L1 can help this L2? We discussed a bunch of times, right? Like, do you think we should make Ethereum much faster and cheaper to make it better to support like sort of the L2s? And on the other side, I also have the question for Ed and Ali. So what the other ways L2s can further support the L1 like Ethereum?
So from the L1 side, I think two things. So one is we've made it our top priority to increase blob count in 2025. So full speed ahead on PeerDAS, and the goal is to massively increase the number of blobs that Ethereum can support this year, and then massively increase that number again next year. So like we feel that L2s should not have to like constantly worry about where they're going to be putting their data. There should just be enough data space for everyone, and like we think that there can be, right? So that's one. And then two is, I mean, from the like L2 security perspective, I mean, I think there's things that can be done. Like one of the big primary goals, right, I think is continuing to improve the security of the proof systems. And there's two different ways to approach that. I think one is that there's a lot of like shared objectives between L1 and L2 in terms of improving the safety of ZK EVMs, for example. And the other approach is this like native rollup precompile approach, which basically says the EVM already has an EVM verification functionality because it has to for Ethereum, and so let's expose that functionality and let's make it available to be called directly by L2s. And like if it's done in the right way, right, then like it can be done in a way that's very modular, right? So like where an L2 that has the EVM and something else, they would be able to use the native precompile for the EVM parts, and then they would have to bring their own logic for the other parts. But the benefit of this would be like you basically would get to greatly simplify the size of the code base that an L2 needs to have.
Got it, got it.
Sure, if I may, let me talk about L1 issues and then talk about what L2s can do. So first of all, you know, as an L2 developer, growth in blob space is super welcome. Blob space is L2 block space. And you know, despite some of the chatter we hear that maybe Ethereum has too much capacity now and we should reduce it in order to get more revenue, you know, I think it's the right approach to try to scale as far as you can, as fast as you can. And that's great to see. There's amazing work going on there. There's a couple other areas of work going on in the L1 space that our team and others are contributing to that I think will help L2s a lot. One of them is to reduce the censorship exposure through mechanisms like Fossil on L1, because for many rollup protocols, the concern about censorship of L1 Ethereum drives some of the design. And another one is faster finality on L1, because L2 finality comes at essentially the speed of L1 finality for well-designed protocols. And again, those problems are both extremely hard, otherwise Ethereum would have solved them already. But there's useful and interesting work going on in that space. But let me pivot to the question you posed to me, which is what can L2s do to help L1? And I think a big part of it is to contribute actively to working on problems like those, right? To contribute to the development of L1. Our team, for example, are the developers of Prism, which is one of the leading consensus clients for Ethereum. And that not only helps us contribute to Ethereum in a significant way, but also helps us to better understand the interplay between L1 and L2 protocol layers. So I think that's a big part of it. Really being active participants in making L1 better as opposed to simply sitting back and leaving all that work to the L1 community.
How about Ali?
Yeah, I think a lot about L1s and L2s is about community and mindshare. And I think on our part, we're very proud of our affiliation with Ethereum. And I think like, you know, directing mindshare and resources and thinking time into also how to, let's say, make things easier to operate on StarkNet on the side of Ethereum would be very much welcome. What we can offer on our side and offering everyone, you know, Ethereum, we're offering it to Bitcoin, we're offering it to client-side proving, is the best proving technology out there. And we'd love to, of course, I think it could do a lot also to help scale Ethereum on the layer 1 level, you know, things like proving the EVM itself. So I'm referring mostly to our 2 proving systems, Stone, which is already in production for 5 years, and Stu, which is going into production in a month. Both of them are open sourced, and I think they can also really reshape what can be achievable in terms of throughput, scale, UX on both L2s and L1s.
Yeah, absolutely. I really agree with like sort of Ed and also Ali, Vitalik on that. We should really figure out like ways, like not just like Ethereum should really help on all the rollups and L2s and to basically have better standards, but at the same time it would be great like we can unite as like sort of one ecosystem to really make it like more popular with small developers. And then I have this kind of very specific question collected from the community. And so we all know, right now, if you look at the market, I mean, we all know that it's not good, and it's really because of tariff, right? And then the question, like, some community members are saying, like, is it possible Ethereum can also charge some tariff on the L2s? It can be like sort of ask L2s to like sort of stake their earned revenues, or basically use their earned revenues to buy back probably more Ether, something like that. Just to like it's various ways, right? I really want to know, like, what's your thought on this? Even sometimes probably it's not like that kind of serious, but I just feel like it's a very sort of interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, so I think, I mean, obviously L2s, I mean, like already pay, some fees to L1 in the form of, I mean, like both proof submission and DA. And I mean, to me, one of the challenges that I've noticed historically is like those two, like the level of fee often ends up swinging pretty wildly, right? And so for the past year, the narrative has been that like, you know, the L2s are exploiting L1 and they're like not giving anything back. But then 2 years ago, remember, the narrative is like the big bad L1 is charging the L2s very high rent, and the L2s will, you know, bravely declare independence and like maybe join Solana or something, right? And basically, you know, the problem is like when, you know, like you have these like two different markets that just like swing in different directions, right? And it's like we don't really have much long-term certainty over like whether the fee accrual on both sides is like even going to be like like basically the ideal outcome, right, I think, is for fee accrual on both sides to be reliably like very, very far from zero, and ideally to be aligned with each other. Yeah. I think, I mean, on the blob count side, like one thing that I support is like there's an EIP to just increase the minimum blob fee, and like I think it's reasonable, and like I think we should just do it. And to me, the reason is that like that blob fee, like that minimum is already like somewhat lower than the I think just average that we've seen over the past year, but generally, like, it basically means that you remove the misalignment of incentives, right? Because currently, like, if you basically, like, the way to get increase the total blob fees is to shrink the blob count, and that's like a very bad perverse incentive. But like, if there's just like a flat minimum fee, then like that pushes everyone toward the only strategy, which is to maximize revenue for L1 and at the same time space for L2s by everyone working together to increase the blob count as much as possible. So like in general, as far as the economics goes, like I'm in favor of like finding more of these things to just make sure incentives are aligned by default as much as possible, and I think that can like help make things even more cooperative.
Yeah, I think incentive alignment really comes from each chain setting a minimum fee. I think a minimum blob data fee makes a lot of sense, and the proposals out there I think are in the right range. Setting minimum fees so that the chains are not operating at a deficit, where, say, at the minimum blob fee right now, certainly it costs the Ethereum validator community more to service those blobs than the revenue that's coming in. And you don't want to be there, right? So you start a baseline at cost, but then above that, it's supply and demand, right? And if you're scaling, if you're creating more blob space, more block space, then prices will stay low. It's a fundamental trade-off in pricing these systems. You can price for short-term revenue by contracting the supply, or you can go for growth by expanding the supply, and in the belief that over the long term, bringing more people in, growing that community is going to lead to creating a robust economic zone, and that the revenue will be there over time. But it is a fundamental trade-off. If you optimize for short-term revenue, I think you end up cutting yourself off from growth and ultimately losing to other L1s. And the same is true for L2s.
Yeah. How about
I do think considering things like tariffs or the sustainable economics of a chain and its ecosystem operators, validators, developers, application developers, core developers, is something that should be taken into consideration. And I think that in that context, actually tariffs or setting minimum prices or things like that does make a lot of sense. I can share that. Well, right now the costs of fees are so low that across certainly our L2, but others as well. But back in the day when fees were a bit higher because Ethereum was congested, so we took most of the revenue that came in and distributed to the developers of end user applications, and it's something that we're committed to do again once there's any significant income coming from fees. I think that sort of makes sense. In general, yeah, so I think this is all with thought about the broadness of the ecosystem and encouraging and ensuring that newcomers, if they offer value to the network, they should be rewarded automatically through the protocol. So I do think things like minimum fees, tariffs, oops, my otter fell, should be considered.
Yeah, so one thing I really agree with, add is that we probably need to recalculate this kind of resource allocation and also previous metrics calculation like you previously present in the keynote. And it's no longer just for Arbitrum. Probably we should consider Ethereum plus all the rollup as a whole, like really the entire token economics and all the cost for validators, and sometimes also about these earnings from the applications and the users. Yeah, we should probably really figure out a better analysis for this model.
If I may, I want to emphasize something. When I think the biggest threat to any blockchain or to any system is that of is the problem of forces of centralization on all levels. And the biggest challenge is, for all of blockchain, is how do we broaden the basis even more on every level of the operators, of the token holders, of the developers, right? Because the issue is that if you look at, Ethereum or Bitcoin or Starknet or any system, right? There is a certain distribution of power at any given point in time. And certainly now, before we've sort of reached global product market fit, 99% of humanity and 99% of developers and companies, they're not part of this. And it's a really hard challenge. How do you bring them in and offer them a way to participate but also be rewarded by it? Now, I don't know what all of the answers are, but this is something that is the most important, I think, challenge for any L1 or L2 out there. And we haven't solved it.
Yeah, I think beyond this, right, my next question will be, we all know that right now, no matter whether we think about it, but in general, we can see that on the supply side, we really have a lot of the rollups and chains, right? And but then on the demand side, so we have the shortage of applications. I think that's the biggest difference between this cycle and the last cycle around DeFi summer. So on this topic, so in your opinion, what are the potential or promising applications we can see can happen either on Ethereum mainnet or on these different rollups, which can really drive the demands, or probably, as Ali mentioned, can bring in the other 99% of the companies or users into Ethereum ecosystem?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, a few categories, right? So one of them, obviously, DeFi, and I think, DeFi is something that just inherently takes some amount of time to get mature enough to be trusted, right? Because for someone managing their portfolio, the most important thing is not if they're getting 3% APY or 6% APY. The most important thing is not getting minus 100% APY. And so when something is immature, the risk of a smart contract hack, the risk of the oracle breaking, the risk of something else happening, even something to the chain itself, that's pretty high, right? And so it just inherently takes time for systems to de-risk, for things to mature, for us to get more assurance. But I feel like that's like actually been happening, right? And so, but then to me, the biggest challenge with DeFi is always like how to escape being like just a self-referential ecosystem, right? And so to me, the solution is like connection to the real world economy, right? And I mean, obviously, you know, we have US dollar stablecoins, but I think we also need both other types of real world assets, including local stablecoins, including company shares, also actually seeing like productive companies natively on chain, you know, and using like various types of DAO structures as a way to actually do that, right? So like actually native on chain, you know, like businesses, another form of real world asset. So that whole piece is one. Another piece is what I call info finance, right, which includes prediction markets, which I feel like have succeeded massively over the past year, and people are just already like regularly linking to them as a source of information. But to me, the prediction markets are only one member of a much larger category that can be explored. It even includes a lot of interesting ideas, again, around governance. And I think in general, like governance and DAOs are like an important theme, and I think we've had a lot of challenges in the past, but also like AI in particular, I think massively expands the possible design space for that. Also decentralized social, and a lot of protocols have been doing well. So there's a lot of like individual application verticals that I think are super interesting, and I'm sure, I mean, like both of these guys here have plenty of other examples that I've missed too.
Sure. I think among all of those, I'd point especially to the integration or connection between DeFi and TradFi as driving a lot of growth and change in how DeFi works, especially the connection to real-world assets that are rooted, whose value is rooted in the real economy. That seems quite important. AI is going to bring a lot of change, and it will bring probably more activity on chain as AI agents, in particular, start to act out on the intents or desires or directives of users. AI agents can trade more frequently, more quickly, and they care a lot about cost and speed. I'd also, in addition to social, point to gaming as a very important space. And of course, all of these are connected. One of the beauties of this space is that you can have systems, applications that combine elements of gaming, social, and finance all together. And the ability to connect these things together, I think, will be big. But then the last thing I'd say is, if the history of computing teaches us anything, is that it's often hard to see what the next killer application is going to be. So probably, if I had to bet, I might even put my money on none of the above.
So if for us, like the biggest utility, for at least for this year, and the thing we'd like to offer the world, it's one thing. It's Bitcoin. So StarkNet, which of course is a layer 2 on Ethereum, is going to be the first what we call L2 squared, which is layer 2 that settles safely onto both Ethereum and Bitcoin. And already today, you can, if you're a Bitcoin holder, you can bridge your Bitcoin over. You can participate in things like staking it, generating yield on it. Basically, we want to take the expressibility that is best done on Ethereum and on its L2s and offer that to the store of value that is Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the asset class that's the largest among all of crypto. It is an amazing store of value, but in terms of medium of exchange and doing things with your Bitcoin, if you have it, that's a huge unsolved problem. And for us, that's the #1 thing that we're trying to bring to the world this year.
Sounds good. It's like RWA, prediction market, decentralized social, gaming, and also this combination of Ethereum and also Bitcoin ecosystem. Yeah, it's quite diversified, I would say. And then my next question would be like, we are talking about like sort of scalability, and also all these kind of ideas around these like either Ethereum mainnet and also L2s, right? And then like how about security? And recently Vitalik mentioned about this multi-prover system, right? It's OPTE plus ZK and also the security console. Can you share a little bit more? And okay, what's the status in general and on the Arbitrum and also Standard?
Yeah, so I think I'm trying to like solve for 3 problems at the same time here, right? So one problem is that I think the withdrawal window must decrease, right? 7 days is not acceptable, and I think even some of the more aggressive proposals, like 2 or 3 days, like they're not acceptable, right? And I think we need to bring withdrawal periods down to 1 hour and eventually even 12 seconds, right? And to me, the basic reason is like we need interoperability to be effective, right? And we need, I mean, obviously users can move coins around through intents, but the problem is intents are just a fancy word for saying you pay someone else to wait a week for you, right? And like paying someone else to wait a week for you is expensive. So that's one problem. The other problem is that we want rollups to get to stage 2 in terms like, so this is the stage 0, stage 1, stage 2 framework that LTB's now using. And the definition of stage 2 basically means it's full trustlessness, right? It means a rollup is actually backed by cryptography, and there aren't like some kind of backdoors that a non-cryptographic thing could use to take the money out, right? The only situations in which non-cryptographic components are allowed to intervene are situations in which the code provably has a bug in it, right? And the third problem is that ZK proofs are still a bit immature. They still regularly have soundness bugs, and so we don't want to rely on them too much quite yet. Now, we have some really fascinating formal verification ZK EVM stuff happening, verified-zkevm.org, or talk to Justin Drake or Alex Hicks. They're wonderful people. It's a wonderful site, but like that's still a little bit in the future, and I think we want to really improve things for people now, right? And so how do you solve for all 3 at the same time, right? One is, in the normal case, like we basically make a 2 out of 3, right? In the normal case, we want at least 2 of the proof systems to be instant, right? Optimistic requires waiting 7 days. ZK and TE, they qualify. We also want 2 out of 3 to be purely cryptographic, right? We want to like push things up to the threshold of relying, like majority reliance on cryptographic trust, and so ZK and OP cover there. And we want to rely on things that are relatively proven, and so OP and TE are both covered there, and ZK is newer, right? And so if you make a 2 of 3 out of those, then like it actually manages to solve those 3 things at the same time, right? And so for me, this is this kind of like a really nice and like surprisingly simple architecture that like gets at a lot of goals at the same time in the short term in a pretty nice way. And like I think we should start from things like this, and I think we should also like iterate on them and like improve all of the different types of proof system further at the same time.
Yep. So multi-prover, multi-mode prover is a big part of the way that we're thinking about the future of proving. And I actually yesterday gave a talk over on stage 2 about laying out, thinking about multi-prover approach on next generation proving. And I think the core question here is, well, what if there's a bug in the trusted computing base of the chain? Right? That is, trusted computing base in security lingo means all of the code whose correctness you're relying on for the safety and liveness of your system. And that includes not only the provers, it also includes the code about which you're proving. That is a state transition function, which typically includes something like a big chunk of reth or geth or something similar. It also includes the compiler toolchain that you use to take that state transition function source code and turn it into whatever it is you're proving over. So I think what you really want is a system that gives you the best resilience against those sorts of bugs. And this is why I differ a little bit from the 2 out of 3 approach, the pure 2 out of 3 approach, because 2 of those modes, ZK proving and optimistic proving, both rely on the assumption that the, say, the machine code that you're proving over is correct.
TEs do as well.
And TEs do as well, right. And so I think you need, in addition to those purely mechanized proving mechanisms, mechanisms that rely on some kind of human judgment. That is, there is a role for a Security Council. The challenge is how you make it so the Security Council doesn't, the ability of Security Council to act doesn't cause a lot of delay. And I'm not going to re-give my talk from yesterday up here. Just point you to the fact to expect some writing from our team laying this out over time. I think it's a really important issue. I think multi-mode proving is the future. But if I could, just one more thing. I want to differ from Vitalik in a friendly and respectful way in one other place, which is I don't think that you need to wait for proving in order to have intent-based cross-chain interop. I think you can do that faster than proving. And I think that's the future, that you want to be able to do it faster than proving, because proving will always be at least 12 seconds.
Okay, so I also want to respectfully disagree. I'm a ZK Stark maxi. I think that going multi-mode proving is actually not the right way to go. And usually, if you take multiple cryptographic systems and build them one into the other, you generally get a system that is going to be less secure, not more secure. And factually, StarkNet and StarkX have been in production for almost 5 years. We have had 0 soundness bugs, and it's completely battle-tested and even formally proven a lot of the parts of it. So I would say, first of all, I do not trust a T for anything of value, period. Never have, never will, period. And I can explain why. It has a secret key baked in, and probably for $1 billion or less, you can find physical ways to extract those physical keys. So for me, bringing a trusted execution environment into any system that's supposed to hold immense value is already, to me, a non-starter. I also, again, as a matter of fact, we did not have any soundness bugs on StarkNet ever. So on StarkNet or StarkX. So saying that ZK EVMs, not all ZK VMs have soundness bugs. Some of them actually work very well, and it's very vetted technology. So I'll say again, I'm a ZK Stark maxi. I think we have a very safe system. I think the right way to go is not 3 out of 1. It is to acknowledge that ZK Starks are the end game. I think we will reach there, and I think that's, to me, I think that's the right way to go.
Ellie, I'm also curious, what is StarkNet's current roadmap for removing reliance on security councils?
I don't remember the exact timeline, but we are going to... So the decentralization roadmap has decentralized block validation by the end of this year in version 14, and then version, that's version 0.14, and I think within half a year, decentralized block proposal and proving in version 1.0. Now, when the Security Council goes away, I don't know. I can get back on that, but nevertheless, I would still not go. I will say this. I'm pretty sure that on StarkNet, we will not have a combination of, we will only use one thing, and that one thing, or our aim is to use only one thing, and that one thing is ZK Stark proofs.
Yeah, makes sense.
We probably can bring this topic back to the backstage, because we only have the time for the last question. So the last question, we have all the OGs here, Vitalik, of course, the creator for Ethereum, and we've been through multiple cycles. All the tough time, like back in 2018, 19, and also 2022, something like when the market is down, right? People typically the mood is also down, and but at the same time, we also feel that it's probably the best timing to build. And at the same time, we also want to have probably more decent VCs to support these builders and applications. And I believe all the audience here, either sort of the builders in Ethereum ecosystem or the backholders, and definitely supportive of Ethereum ecosystem, right? So then my last question will be, can each of our panelists say something to cheer up everyone? And at the same time, if you feel like there anything basically on your side, we will support more builders in this kind of tough time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the core of the case for excitement is that like the need has been proven, and like I think there's a very wide demand across a whole bunch of different sectors, you know, including finance, including social, and I mean, some of this involves unfortunate things happening, right? But like I think the idea that we want to have our society to run on something better than centralized systems is something that really has absolutely proven itself to not be ideology, but to be reality that can be backed up by specific examples that each and every one of us can relate to. And at the same time, the technology is there to actually deliver each and every one of those things that we've been dreaming about in the white paper 10 years ago, right? And whether it's financial applications or social or like better kinds of wallet designs, like if you go through every single item, then like we actually see that in 2025, each of those things is very well on its way to being solved, and big parts have been solved already, right? This is true for scalability. This is true for layer 2 security. This is even true for privacy. I mean, like things like Railgun are being used regularly and actually have proven their ability to simultaneously protect people's privacy and block out bad actors from participating in them. Like there's specific examples you can point to. On account abstraction, multi-sig wallets are great, and you even have ZK wrappers. So like there's just an unprecedented number of tools. So I think in general, like all of the tools to actually build each and every specific thing that we've been dreaming about the whole time actually are there. And now is the time to like really actually, like think back, remember why we all came here, and go out and build it.
All right, so Vitalik gave my #1 answer to that question. Unsurprisingly, people are building amazing things. We're making progress. We're making discoveries. The market will have mood swings. The press will have mood swings. But people are building, and the things that are getting built, discovered, are amazing. But my #2 answer is improvement in the regulatory environment. One of the big things holding back progress, especially in DeFi, has been that regulators in many places have been either hostile or else just uncertain and slow. And that's improving a lot in the US. It's improving very nicely here in Hong Kong as well, and many places around the world. And so I think the fact that the regulatory environment is getting better, there's more certainty, and we're seeing not only companies that are OGs in this space acting with more confidence, but we're also seeing a lot of bigger players coming in. And that's going to drive a lot of growth in the next cycle.
I think that we have, actually these winters, I'm not counting already which number winter is this since I entered crypto, which was in 2013, but I've been through quite a few, both with, as co-founder of StarkWare, before that also as co-founder of Zcash. So like, I've been through a bunch of them. I guess all of us have weathered a bunch of them. First of all, winter is a very good time to look back at fundamentals and ask really good questions. Like one question, does all of crypto today have product market fit? I'll mention, and the answer is no. I'll mention, Google's toothbrush test. Something has product market fit if it's like a toothbrush. It is something you use once or twice a day, that everyone uses once or twice a day and finds value in. Now, none of crypto is there yet. So there's still a huge opportunity and also a huge challenge. To reach that challenge, as Ed mentioned, certainly regulatory environment has changed for the better. That's really great. The other two things are UX and scale. But let us not forget, like, during summertime, everyone looks at the latest speculation, bubble, whatever. This time it probably was meme coins on Solana. But let's not forget, what really crypto is about you owning your life in the digital space, in the financial space. And the only way you get to own your life is if things are sufficiently broad, sufficiently decentralized, and also can support global scale with decent UX. So do your own research, search for things that are truly aligned with that thing and are heading there, and I think you're going to be fine come next summer or the summer after that. Happy winter to all.
Yeah, so that's really amazing answer, and as I mentioned, right, all the audience here and all the panelists, we all believe like we can unite together and make Ethereum great again. And that concludes the panel, and thanks for your time, and hope you can enjoy the other conference talks. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you so much, our incredible panelists, experts, and OG. Please remain at the stage. Look at the camera to capture this special moment. Thank you so much. Cheers. Okay, thank you so much for our panelists, for everyone flying to Hong Kong for this regional flagship event.